So let's talk a minute about what's going on in Europe at the time. So World War I sees the collapse of four governments: the Ottomans, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia. The designation of Russia's Tsar, who was Nicholas II, was unsuccessful at stabilizing the power balance between the rich and the ruling elite. And so the common person in Russia leads the Russian Revolution, just like we see in France. Spain has its own set of issues in terms of revolution, which all was really put into place or got the ball rolling when we talk about the Protestant Reformation and the Catholic Counter Reformation. So it starts with Protestant Reformation and then the Catholic Counter Reformation, and the spirit of revolution and change begins to emerge, leading to World War I, which, like I said, leads to the collapse of four governments: the Ottomans, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia. But you also see revolution in France. You see it in Spain. And ultimately, revolution in the United States. The designation of the Russia Tsar, who was Nicholas II, was unsuccessful at stabilizing power. There's a power balance in monarchy between the rich and the ruling elite. And so, if you can't get a handle on that power balance, it gives power to the modern everyday person to create an uprising and overthrow the ruling elite. Ultimately, those ideas lead to revolution, just like the French Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, the eventually Spanish Revolution. In the Russian Revolution specifically, they end up with a communication issue because Russia is so very large. And so that doesn't help the Bolshevik Revolution issue. If you look at this map, you can see where the Bolshevik territory is. You can see that the Orange territories were lost from Finland and areas like Poland. You can see where the major Civil War battles are. Those are the green arrows. Oh, I'm sorry, the red starbursts. And then the white Russian and forces are marked by the green arrows. Revolution in Russia. The Bolsheviks take over the country, and opposing forces exist and result in a civil war. The war was quickly ended because the Bolsheviks were willing to give control and the land up. This time of peace ends quickly, though, because Lenin, who is the leader of the Bolsheviks, wants to take over the country, and that formed when they gave up the land. The Bolsheviks are called the Reds, and they're led by Lenin. He develops a new constitution and voids the right of property to nobility, the bourgeoisie, and the clergy, who were really the major offenders of excessive living before the revolution. And his plans give rights to the urban workers and the landless peasants based loosely on the ideas of Karl Marx. At this time, Karl Marx has written the Manifesto, which is a utopian promise of a classless society. And plenty seemed always around the corner, but just out of reach. The Bolsheviks used violence and intimidation to suppress dissident opposition. He is an ex-imperial military officer. They're called the Whites, and they force that. They're the forces that oppose the Bolshevik regime in a civil. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back a minute. There are a group of ex-imperial military officers, and they're called the Whites, and they force the opposition of the Bolsheviks regime and a civil war ensues. Here is Tatlin's sculpture. It hangs in the corner of a room. Most of Tatlin's sculptures hang in the corners of rooms. He actively uses the open and negative space, and he's really playing with this idea of sculpture being an inherent object. He wants to pull that inherent object apart. So it's almost as if he's a deconstructivist. It's why they call him a laboratory constructivist. He's experimenting. Above all, he wants to really bend art to modern purposes. This particular design was his experimentation at deconstructing sculpture. So another artist from the Constructivists was Rodchenko. Rodchenko developed this interior model of the Soviet Workers' Club for the Soviet Pavilion at the Paris International Exposition of Modern and Decorative Art. It focused on the ease of use of simplicity of form and construction, meaning that everything that was there was meant to be there for simple purposes. The chairs, while being beautiful and being objects that seemed somewhat sculptural, were functional, as well as the library tables were functional. They provided a slight slant so that you could prop a book up on the table and sit and read. The focus of the interior design was on ease of use and, of course, simplicity of form. The furniture is made of wood because the Soviet production industry was best suited for the mass production of furniture in wood. So we're going to take a journey back to Tatlin here. Tatlin designed this monument / building. It was a piece of art that continued after the Russian Revolution in 1917 for a small amount of time. It was one of the first buildings conceived entirely in abstract forms. It was built as a model, and the model itself was 22 feet high, and it was displayed in the exhibition of the 8th Congress of the Soviets in December of 1920. It consisted of a leaning spiral, iron framework supporting a glass cylinder, a glass cone, and a glass cube, each of which rotated at different speeds. The building's interior would have contained halls for lectures, conferences, and other activities. The monument was to be the world's tallest structure, more than 1,300 feet tall, but it was never built because the Soviet government disapproved of non-figurative art. Russian supremacy recalls Russian intellects that were drawn from French society. So a lot of the Russian avant-garde scene was based on what was going on in Paris at the time.